because we were all on the same page with this. It's on the record. It's part of the journal of this House and will be for as long as that journal exists. 126-0. 126-0, we voted in this House to include the following language. The physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult is not a protected class under this chapter. Very reasonable. I got to imagine that unanimous consent to that language that we expressed on this floor is very indicative, very representative of the support it has beyond these walls out in Minnesota amongst Minnesotans. Something strange happened in conference committee that was not resolved, and that was the removal of this language. Now, folks, I think rationally ask the question, why? Why would you do that? What's going on here? And it can be very tempting, and we've seen plenty of examples of it, to jump to conclusions regarding what the intention is. But what I want to do is I want to address the actual stated intention, because I've heard it a couple of places, primarily online, unfortunately, because this isn't a conversation we've been having together in official proceedings. And the rationale that I've heard is that, and the reason why this became a controversy in the first place was because of a bill that was introduced in order to remove similar language from the section of the chapter of law where we were talking about sexual orientation. And that language previously had said, prior to the Niska Amendment, which had changed it to this, where it talks about a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult not being a protected class under this chapter, the prior language had said that a physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult will not be considered a sexual orientation. And so the concern, as I understand it, is that that was furthering a harmful trope, that there's some inherent characteristic to the LGBT community which precludes them towards deviant behavior when it comes to children, and that in order to combat that harmful trope, we need to remove this language from statute. Now, to the extent that that's a trope that needs to be combated, I'm on board. Let's combat it. If the price of doing so is removing legal protection for children from statute, I think that price is a little bit too high. Just a little bit. And what I find confusing is that I think the reason why the Niska Amendment was accepted on a 126-0 vote was because we all recognized that the Niska Amendment was a solution to the problem. And we accepted the premise on good faith, right? We don't want to further a harmful trope that a physical or sexual attachment to children can be a sexual orientation. Okay, then let's change the language. Let's put it in a different section. Let's say that physical or sexual attachment to children by an adult is not a protected class, because there are all sorts of protected classes that go above and beyond and outside of merely sexual orientation. So now there's no longer that connection. The connection has been severed. The trope has been put down. But we're still protecting kids. We're still saying that we're going to stand against efforts which do exist and are ongoing to make a physical or sexual attachment to children protected to one degree or another. And look, if you don't believe me, let me cite the not at all right-wing rag. This is the National Library of Medicine. It is an official United States government website. In order to keep that temperature down, because I don't want this to get heated, I'm going to avoid using a certain word. And even though it's printed here, even though it's part of this language in a study, an academic scientific study that's on a US government website, I'm not going to use the word. I'm going to replace it with a physical What's the language we're looking at here? Physical or sexual attachment to children. All right. So the title of this study is Humanizing a Physical or Sexual Attachment to Children as Stigma Reduction, a large-scale intervention study. And the abstract begins by stating that the stigmatization of people with a physical or sexual attachment to children is a topic of growing academic and professional consideration owing to its potential role in moderating the emotional well-being of people with a physical or sexual attachment to children. Again, this is an academic paper published on a United States government website expressing academic concern about the emotional well-being of adults who have a physical or sexual attachment to children. There's another government website, U.S. Department of Justice. We've all heard of that one, Office of Justice Programs. We've got one of those here in the state of Minnesota. Another paper, The Legal Position of Adults Who Have a Physical or Sexual Attachment to Children. A discussion of the nature of that inclination and arguments against strict legal sanctions in cases where people have a physical or sexual attachment to children. And it goes on to lay it out. Again, this is a federal U.S. Department of Justice published academic paper. Those are the official sources. And of course, we've all heard of certain organizations that exist for the sole purpose of normalizing a physical or sexual attachment to children. This is a real thing. And the idea that in that context we are going to remove from our statutes the exclusion, the prohibition upon that inclination someday in the future, as Representative Niska rightly outlined, potentially becoming or being treated as, to one degree or another, a protected class in the state of Minnesota, to me, again, I'll be nice, I'll keep the temperature down, seems ill-advised. Ill-advised. And so I support this motion to refer this back to the conference committee so that you guys can fix this, because I know you want to. I know you want to. And that's the other thing that I want to be on the record. And I don't even have to go on the record because we went on the record, all of us did. 126-0. There isn't a single person in this room, not one, that wants to endanger children. Take that to the bank. And folks who are saying otherwise are wrong. And I'm happy to stand out and say they're wrong. But they're rightfully upset that we are not doing everything we can, that we're taking an action that might someday have the effect of loosening protections for our kids, and that it's something that you can fix. You can fix it by going to your colleagues over in the Senate and telling them, what are you doing? Guys, please, for your own sake, because you're not going to want this. You are not going to want to be able to look back on this moment at some point in the future where something that none of us want to see happens, and know that you had the opportunity to fix it and that you couldn't because you let somebody over in the Senate tell you that they weren't going to let you do it. Please vote to send this back to committee. Thank you.